Hi, everybody. Welcome to our documentary filmmaker panel of the Arizona International Film Festival. I'm Juliana Piccillo, and I'm really thrilled to be here with Sandy Cummings and Faith Howe, documentarians who have films in the festival this year. So welcome.
Thank
Nice to
you.
be here. Thank you.
Great to
I
be
want
here.
to congratulate you both. I've seen both of your films. They are amazing and really enjoyed both of them. And so I'm really excited to dig in and talk about them.
Thank you.
So I guess just to start out, I'm curious as to what brought you to these films. Why don't we start with Sandy? What brought you to Charity's story? And you could give us maybe a little synopsis for the viewers who haven't seen the film yet, because I don't think it's shown yet at the festival. Yeah.
So Space, Hope, and Charity is about Charity Woodrum, and her story is essentially about facing incredible challenges in her life, including horrible tragedy, and finding her way back with help from childhood friends, complete strangers, and mentors. And she found her way back to the place where she finds peace, which is by exploring galaxies that are billions of light years away from us. And so it's really a story of resilience, tenacity, human connection, and really the power of when people come together and amazing things happen. So I think of it as being heartbreakingly beautiful. And I first heard about Charity actually from a friend of mine who was her junior high school cheerleading coach. And she was telling me this amazing story about Charity and everything that she had been through and what she had overcome. And I literally got goosebumps. And that's when I know it's a story that I want to help tell. I knew that her story would be inspiring to other people who were going through their own challenges. And I still feel very strongly that her story will do that and does do that. So that's really how it all came about. I flew to Tucson and we had tacos together and talked, and we felt like we were very much aligned in what we wanted to achieve through the film. And so that's kind of how it all got launched. That was back in 2019, and then the pandemic shut us down for a while, and then we got back to it and just finished in January. So we're very excited to get it out there.
You just finished it in January. Wow.
Yes.
Did you face any particular challenges when approaching this project? Other than the pandemic?
Other than the pandemic, that little thing, which so many people faced as well. For me, because my background was working in network television news, I was used to just, you have a budget and you just go out and you do it. And so financing an independent film is certainly challenging. I know it was for me, and I think for a lot of people. I've heard stories of people who mortgage their houses and they go into personal debt. And I really didn't want to do that. And through a series of connections, I was very fortunate to get full funding for the film. But that part of it is incredibly time consuming. And I think people don't realize how much work goes into just getting a film funded and finding a fiscal sponsor and working all of that out. So that was challenging. And then the other not funny challenge was just Mother Nature, which was, we were shooting in Oregon and fire broke out, wildfire, right where we wanted to shoot. So the whole area was shut down and areas around were just full of smoke. So we ended up having to go and do a fair amount of reshooting in the area where Charity had grown up, to kind of create that part of tell that part of the story. So wildfire, pandemic, financing, those were probably my top three, and now it's distribution.
Yeah, biblical.
Exactly.
I just want to welcome Bridget. Bridget, we're really lucky to have you join us.
Oh, thanks
Um,
so much. Sorry, I had a hard time signing on. I'm so used to just signing on, but I had to do stuff, so sorry.
I know, like, you go to sign on and they tell you have to update or something.
Yeah.
So we're just going around asking folks about their projects. So I'm going to go to Faith and then we'll get you next. So Faith, tell me how you came upon this subject and any particular challenges you faced.
Our film just screened last night at the film festival, and
And can I
it was
say it was fabulous?
Yeah, it was great.
yeah,
I was there too, yeah.
it's and that's wonderful to hear from, because as you probably saw, we were in the front row. We were, so that we could be up close and personal for the Q&A, and so it was really nice to turn around and to see, and so many people that were there to bear witness to the story. The nature of healing is the spoken truth of 7 courageous survivors of the Mohawk Institute. Mohawk Institute is Canada's first and longest running Indian residential school. It began in 1831 and it closed in 1970. And how I came upon it was, I wasn't, it was one of those films that just grew. We were talking about this last night, that originally when I met the survivors, I met one survivor first. I met Blanche Hill Easton because I had heard that she had returned to school as an 83-year-old student to learn how to write her language, and that she was a survivor of the Mohawk Institute, and that she had graduated top of her class at the age of 86. And I just thought, who is this incredible woman? I really need to meet her. And I knew about the Mohawk Institute. I knew that I knew about it because in our own family, my great-grandmother had been in the Institute, but I had never been at the grounds until the fall of 2021. And shortly thereafter, right around that time, I met Blanche, and then Blanche introduced me to 3 other people who sat down and explained to us that they were building a Mohawk Village Memorial Park. So they were building a memorial park that was the traditional lands of the Mohawk Village, right beside the Mohawk Institute. And I hadn't heard a thing about their park. So initially, I thought that, my background was marketing and fundraising, and I was no longer doing that work anymore. But I had, as an older student myself, had gone back to school and taken a post-grad certificate in video production. I thought, okay, I can help build a sizzle reel, like surely I can help there. And then they sat down and on the day that I met the 3 of them, John Elliott, Roberta Hill, and Blanche Hill Easton, they sat down in front of the camera and then they began to share. And from there, they, I thought, we know how to commemorate things on this land. I mean, we're really good at it. We should be able to build a memorial park. But then as a couple of weeks went by and I looked at the footage, they then, I call it the grandmother nudge. Grandmother Roberta Hill was really great at saying, have you met Elder Bud White-Eye? Like, I've spoken with him and he thinks that, yes, he would sit down with you. So I did go down to Sarnia and I sat down, we had a coffee together, and he said, okay, Faith, tell me what it is you're doing. And I said, well, I'm really not quite sure right now, but I think that we're going to, at the very least, we can build a sizzle reel. Let's see what we can pull together, what kind of conversation we can have, and let's get this memorial park, because all of the children, there were 15,000 children who were in the Mohawk Institute over the course of its 140 years. And this needs to be acknowledged. And they explained that this was a healing place where people could come and share and come to have a walk of healing. And Bud said, okay, I will go home and you get ready. And so my cameraman, who is my biggest supporter, he happens to be, he's my husband as well. So he came with his camera and his sound equipment. We rolled camera for 2 hours. And we knew, as we began to review the footage, we knew that we were, and I said this last night, and let me say it again, you know when you're in the presence of greatness, when you hear their story and you bear witness to the resilience and to what it is that they continue to do for themselves, for their families, and for their communities, and for all Indigenous people across the lands that have been touched by this horrific attempt at genocide. So,
What
but
challenges did you face in
yeah,
trying to get it completed?
and that really, I know it's a long, that's a long story to get there, because there's the story within the story, right? So that's, as you know, Bud teases me, you thought this was going to be a scissor reel. Really, it was not, and it wasn't really a challenge. We just had to continue to follow the path of the story, and it led us across the province. We we didn't have it all in two takes. We didn't have it. We continued to meet other people, and then for me, then the next challenge was to really understand, like, how did this happen? So I knew about it, but I didn't know about it. And there's a difference once you start to do your research and try to wrap your mind around how did this happen. So that was one that took time to do the research and to really see how the story would unfold. The other, and it's not a challenge. Didn't have, the vision wasn't locked down. It was unscripted. We moved through the story. So timing, I would think I wanted it to be done quicker. I wanted to be able to complete the project, but really we just finished in December of 2022. So because we feel it's so important to build this park as well, to get this word out, to educate, because there's so much education that is happening, needs to continue to happen around us.
Yeah, it was a really powerful story. I mean, I was familiar with the schools, but really got me thinking about the long-term legacy of that on people's culture. So it was just such an important piece. And also about resilience, like Sandy's film, also very much a story of both trauma and resilience, which was beautiful. Bridget, your beautiful film, Bella, about an amazing pioneer of modern dance. Tell us a little bit about what led you to tell that story and any challenges you faced.
Okay, I was a modern dancer myself back in the day. And I was in Boston. I was dancing in Boston and New York. And my teacher in Boston was named Susan Rose. And she had been a student of Bella's at CalArts. Bella was the first dean of dance. She was the founding dean of dance at CalArts. So her company came to do a performance in Boston in 1978. And I went, and, it was amazing. I just thought they were so amazing. And plus I had been studying with, her students. So the Lewinsky technique was in there and I was learning it, and to see it really done to the nth degree was amazing. So that summer I went to a workshop in Buffalo, SUNY Buffalo, that she did. And then in 1980 and 81, I went to workshops in Idlewild in California, outside Palm Springs. And I then in 82 got a scholarship to UCLA to get a master's in dance, but I was kind of bored with the dance department. So I ended up going up to the film school. So I did a master's in dance, and then I did an MFA in film and television. And yeah, I think I finished 1990, something like that. And I had always wanted to work on a film about Bella, but just put it into the back of my head. And it really wasn't until I moved back to LA in 2003. And I spent a lot of time with her and her husband, Newell, and she ended up passing away in July of 2004. So it was great to spend that last year with her. Anybody who ever knew her as a student or as a collaborator, presenters, press people, anybody, she made such an impact on you. And
Mhm.
she had such a voice, and she was completely committed to issues of freedom of expression, issues of social justice. And I think her voice has been lost over time. She's been written out of dance history. She's been written out of Los Angeles cultural history. And she was such an important part of that. So I really felt compelled to make the film about her. It wasn't until I actually taught film production for 28 years in universities. And I started working on the film 6 years ago, like really, really working on it. But I found that I couldn't finish it if I was still working.
Mhm.
So I retired from my job at Cal State LA so I could work on the film full time. And of course, then the pandemic happened and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I had this, we all have the same issues. It's funding, it's time, it's people. And yeah, now we finished July of 22, and we've been doing festivals, and we've had a really good run with festivals. But yeah, we're looking for a distributor now. That's where we are.
Mhm. All of you, to some extent, have to use a fair amount of archival material to tell your stories. Can you talk anything about the challenges of using archival footage, when you don't have a story happening in real time and there's not, contemporary action happening? Can you talk a little bit about your approach stylistically, particularly you, Bridget, maybe to start, because your film is pretty much entirely archival
Yeah.
and
Who knew?
beautifully executed, beautifully executed.
Who knew? Well, I was lucky because she has an archive at USC in the Doheny Library, Special Collections. So
Mhm.
I researched there, starting, she was still alive, in 2003. I remember bringing her and her husband to the archive so they could see it. So I
Mhm.
used to just do research, and then I did all the initial research myself. But, never think that just because something is in an archive that they own it,
Mm.
because that may not be true. Thank God Bella did actually sign over all of her stuff. So
Oh,
they
good.
did
Lucky
own
you.
her stuff, but it was things like I had VHS tapes of her being interviewed from a news station in the
Mhm.
80s. So
Mhm.
you had to go and find that news station. There's not very many that still exist, and or
Mhm.
who bought that news station over and blah, blah. So I ended up in June of 21 bringing in an archival producer
Mhm.
who was wonderful. Her name is Hillary Dan. And I got her from Rebecca Kent, who was the archival producer for the Ailey film. So Hillary was just fabulous. And then eventually we brought in an associate because it's a lot. We had a
Mhm.
lot of archival material, and we did a lot of licensing. We had to get a lot of permissions, and we had fair use lawyers, Donaldson
Mhm.
Perez, who were sort of the big fair use lawyers. They were our lawyers, and
Right.
yeah, I couldn't have done it without the archival producers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's daunting. Just hearing you talk about it, it's kind of makes my head spin.
Yeah,
And
mine
so,
spun for years. Sorry.
did you have to end up spending a fair amount of money on some of like the news footage and that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, our
Right.
biggest ticket item was licensing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
I would imagine.
more than editorial. Second, I thought editorial was going to be the highest item, but it turned out to be licensing.
Right. Right.
I mean, we have
Mm.
a clip from Oklahoma. And, of course, the music licensing is separate from the visual licensing, and it's all of that. So yeah,
A lot.
a
So
lot.
what about you, Sandy? You were using, I guess, a lot of personal archival photos and things from charity.
Right. For this film, it was really primarily charities, home videos and, family, friends who had materials as well. I did need to license some material from Oregon State Police. I mean, some of it was free. Actually, I didn't need to license from them. Theirs was free, but things like 911 tapes and that kind of thing.
You had to license that.
Well, yes, had to license it, but that part was free. In terms of licensing, then I did use some stock, not really stock footage, but some footage. I found a drone operator
Mhm.
who had some footage of Coast Guard searches and that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
so I needed to license that from him. So there were some things. And then music, we actually were able to hire a composer, which was an incredible thing for us to be able to do. And so working all of that out. But this one, there wasn't a lot of archival where I needed to go and go digging for things like I'm sure Faith did,
Mhm.
and Bridget on their projects.
Yeah, Faith, I mean, I was amazed that you had the photos and things that you had of your subjects, because they were like wards of the state, and they didn't have doting parents on hand to take photos of them. So how hard was that to get that material?
The photos of each of them that were their own personal photos were their photos,
They
and
had
they
those
had
photos.
yes, most of them had a photo or two.
Mhm.
We had one for certain who doesn't have any childhood photos.
Wow.
And then yeah, and then the other materials, that was all licensed, but because they were all they were so old that we didn't have to pay any licensing fee for them, but we got permission to use everything as we found it. The only thing that we had to pay for and for licensing also, again, were the newspaper articles. So and that was our biggest expense. And I'm thinking now, like, that was and even the media company, um, they they were good. They helped us out a little bit, as much as they could when they understood the project. And yeah.
Just to take a
Yeah.
different, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I don't know if you noticed, but there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, it's for Bridget, and we're going to come round to it, but thank you so
Okay.
much, because
Sure.
I'm a space cadet. But one thing I also wanted to talk to you all about, and I know it doesn't particularly pertain to Bridget's film, but I'm sure as a filmmaker and a film scholar that you have thoughts on this. What are the ethical considerations when, we as outsiders shoot people who have gone through trauma, and we are trying to honor them and also make a film, which is, our work, our career. Um, so it's a piece of work that advances our careers, we hope. But also we go to it. I think most documentarians are activists, and we go to it with a mission to honor these people. But it's a really like weighty responsibility, right? To represent someone and not re-traumatize, not harm them. Was there any times where that was tricky for any of you, or any thoughts you have about that? Anybody can jump
I
in.
have, go ahead, Faith, I'll follow you.
I would say that when you go back to what was your biggest challenge, I would say that probably was my biggest challenge. It was so laid like on inside, like on my heart, that there had already been enough harm done that
Mhm.
we did not set it. Like, I did not want any more harm. It was like it, and so um always being so mindful. And that's why it was so important that to follow where they led, to follow their story.
Mhm.
So if they were asking, did I speak to this person? What about this? What about then I knew that I had permission. Um, and every step of the way, they were part of the process. So we collaborated, in my mind, we collaborated on this film. This was co-produced with them. So
Mhm.
I will say it, I know I'm in the credits as the director, and truly the story directed me. And the grandmothers and the elders and the grandfather, they they're the directors too. So that was, yeah, it wasn't until, and I think when I look back, and I remember saying this to my husband, it was when we finished on that very final day, and you do the final render, or you think it's the final render, until something, you've got to tuck one more thing in. And um I felt such an immense relief, like such a because again, I didn't want to do any harm. So I realized that I had really, that I had held that all through. So, and they would tell me, and I needed to, it was good to listen all the time, like listen acutely, like just really pay attention.
Mm-hmm. Good, Sandy.
With Charity, we needed to establish trust. We definitely did, because she had been through this awful experience, and then the people she trusted the most in her life ended up not being there for her after, and some bad things happened with these folks who were the closest people to her. And so it really was important to both of us that she felt she could trust me, and that trust took time to build. And a lot of it too was allowing her, because of the trauma she had been through, allowing her to really guide how much she wanted to share about the really personal parts of her story, and not pushing her. And if she knew that we could stop at any point during the interview, if she needed to take a break, have some water, talk about something else, and then come back to it or not. We also were very careful to let her choose whether and when she wanted to return to where the tragedy happened. So that was completely up to her. Even on the day we were there with her and the cameraman was there, she decided when it would happen, if it would happen. And she knew that if she wanted to knock it out of the car, that was fine. It was fine with us. So really, I think giving her some control over the telling of her story. And but there's also that line of, you can't hand over editorial control of your film. And so that took some time to work out, because her feeling was, this is my story, I should have some control over it. And my feeling was, if I give up that control, then you lose some credibility, just because of the way my background was. And so what we decided on was that she would absolutely get to see it before anybody else did. If there was anything in it that was, taken out of context or incorrect, it would be corrected. If it was something that she was uncomfortable with, there would be a conversation about it. And she reached a point where she was fine with that. And I was so relieved. We had a private screening with just Charity and a couple of her close friends who were in the film. And the editor flew up, and we got an Airbnb and ordered some Thai food and just sat, and they were all in their pajamas, which was so great. And we had dinner, and then we watched it together. And I just was so relieved that she felt great about it and felt like it had been done the way she would have wanted it to have been done. So huge relief, I think, for both of us.
Yeah, of course, I bet. Bridget, do you have any thoughts on the topic, or you don't have to?
Well, it was, I got permission from Bella's daughter, Nora, to do the film.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the biggest thing. And Nora is definitely her mother's daughter. She completely believes in freedom of expression. So she really had nothing to do with the making of the film. I don't even know if she's seen it yet. I've sent it to her, but I really don't know. But yeah, no, even, it's somebody who's dead, you really have to respect who they were. And I was fortunate because I knew Bella really well, but I also didn't want to do like the Lifetime biopic.
Right.
And we did have that version at one point, but that's not her. I mean, she was a very strong, intelligent, opinionated woman, and she was not going to be pushed around. And she wasn't. That was really, and as somebody says in the film, she could reduce you to a pile of rubble with just a look. And she could. So I just felt it was important to do a very three-dimensional portrait of her. and not have it be like, oh, she was just so nice, nice.
I
But
think it's such an important conversation about these ethical considerations because, you know, young filmmakers typically are drawn to trauma and people in abject circumstances. And I don't think they really think about the ethical considerations of putting a camera on somebody who's in a very difficult place in their life or asking them to talk about a trauma they went through. So what advice would you have for young filmmakers wanting to make stories about other people?
well, that was something I
Documentarians.
dealt with a lot in my teaching,
Mhm,
because I was teaching students how to make stuff. And yeah, I would have really big discussions with them about, you know, who is this person? Who is their community?
mhm,
Who are you? What is your community? You know, and to really sit down and develop a relationship with, you know, either the institution that they were working with or the person or the people that they were working with, that was like the biggest part of making a documentary is that's the research. That's really, you know, getting this relationship settled with the two of you, and making sure that you're clear and that they're clear about what it is that you're doing.
mhm. And let's get to the question for you, why we have you here. How do you think Bella's life and career can inspire or influence contemporary artists and creatives?
Well, I think, you know, she was somebody, again, who really believed in freedom of expression and issues of social justice, and she spoke up. She used
Mhm,
her voice. And I
mhm,
think that that's one of the most important things that young dancers could do today, young artists, young
mhm,
filmmakers, is to speak up and to let people know and to not shy away from subjects that might be difficult or hard for them. Um,
mhm,
but to be part of the dialogue of what's going on. I've often said, you know, in the 5 years we made this film, you know, some pretty horrible things happened. And I would always say, God, I wish Bella was alive, because I would really like to have her voice in the discourse right now.
mhm,
I would really like to hear what she would say, you know, to younger people with her body of experience and her knowledge. Um,
mhm,
so yeah, I think she really can be used as a role model for a
mhm,
lot of younger people today, and especially young women who are dancing.
mhm,
An article just came out by one of her former dancers about the relationship between a choreographer and a dancer, between a creator of a technique and the bodies that that person is created on. It's kind of interesting. But
mhm. Okay, we have another question. Let me see what this is. What do you hope audiences will take away from your films? Sandy, you want to go first?
Sure. A couple of things. One is just the incredible power of human connection and how little it takes to make a huge difference in someone else's life. Charity was so fortunate that people rallied around her and really helped her. Um, and to me, that's one of the most beautiful parts of the film. Also, the role of mentors, how, you know, they too can just have a huge impact. I don't think all teachers realize how much power they actually have in changing someone's life.
Mm,
And, you know, and the other part of it too is just realizing that, to me, it's like if Charity can get through what she did, it makes me feel like I can get through whatever might be happening in my life. I think that her story will inspire other people, particularly people who are grieving or who have been through really difficult situations, to realize that there is something after that. That, you know, one of my favorite sound bites from the film was the idea that grief and joy can exist almost in the same moment.
yeah.
And so if people can latch on to that and allow themselves to feel joy again after they've lost someone dear to them,
Mhm.
then I think that's a great you know, outcome of the film.
Yeah, the film, and it accomplished all of that. It was, you know, I got to see a screener. So, I mean, it was beautifully inspiring and comforting. And yeah, it was just really, it wasn't just a story of resilience. It was somewhat of a sort of template how to get through
Mhm.
the most difficult thing.
Thank you.
So you just did a beautiful job. Faith, what would you say about what you wanted your film to accomplish?
Education. I'm really hoping that people really start to have a conversation that really explores the truth about what really truly happened with our Indigenous peoples across all Turtle Island. That and that they can see again, it's that resilience, and that there are many ways to have a conversation, and that there are many ways to the pathway to healing. Not everybody does it all one way, and you can see in what was shared that through the conversation that people have an opportunity to try to make sense of unbelievable trauma that that happened. And so as they try to make sense, and then not only do these horrific things happen, they then have the compassion and the capacity to lead us forward in healing and to take us to that sharing place. So yeah, that's, and of course, let's build a park too. Like that's, like let's look at the
Yeah,
things
let's build a park. I was really
let's-
amazed that the Canadian
yeah.
government wasn't fully funding this park, that you all have to raise money to make this happen, given the legacy.
Yes.
That's kind of shameful, but yeah, it was incredibly powerful. Again, and a great story of resilience, and to see them all come together and be able to go back to that place where so many horrific things happened. I mean, it was incredibly powerful.
I thought they were so courageous. I'm going to say this too. I so unbelievably courageous to come in through the front door, because that was part of, we too went through the pandemic time, and we also, where there was a lot of memorials that had happened on the steps. There were the children's shoes that had been placed there after the 2015 were recovered in Kamloops. So people created memorials. So my thought was that I had asked them, would they mind coming out the door? I wanted to be able to film them leaving that place as adults, and because they talked about what's happening in their life. And when we did arrive, I knew the shoes were there. I got there and the shoes were there. It's like, oh, they can't go down the stairs. I had asked them if they would feel comfortable coming through the door. So it was one of those, and they all said yes, absolutely. They would come through the front door. And so, but it's not one of those things that, oh, the shot's maybe not quite perfect. Here, can you go do that again? No, that's not. Again, you talked about ethics, and it's not about getting the best shot in the best lighting or the best, like those are some of the things that, I know that sometimes the camera shook, and there were those moments, and those were choices like, no, this is life sometimes does shake, and it's not, many times it's not perfect, and here we are in our in the rawness of the moment. So what did you, I was like, I could talk, it's so great to be able to come here and to be able to talk about the experience that that we had, that we've all had through it. So that would be, I'll let you go, Bridget.
What I loved was when the woman at the end talked about how it was so important to laugh every day.
Yes.
That she had done enough crying.
I cried enough.
But it was so important to laugh. And I was like, oh, that's so true.
And Bridget, was part of your agenda with your film to resurrect her legacy, because you said she was kind of written out of modern dance history?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we do sort of a call to action at the end of the film where she says the arts are being attacked now, more than ever. And that was from 1997. And was at her final performance, and she asked people to carry on her legacy. To do that, and she says something like, if you don't do it, it's going to die. And that's going to be the end of it. So yeah, I thought it was really important for people to know who she was. I mean, she was also a very, very important person in terms of developing technique, a certain technique called the Horton technique. I mean, she was Alvin Ailey's teacher.
Mhm.
And
Why do you think she's gotten marginalized in the history? Because she's a woman?
she was blacklisted, in the 50s. She refused to name names. Her famous line was, "I'm a dancer, not a singer." She also sued the NEA in 1990 when they were requiring people to sign the anti-obscenity oath, and she refused to sign it and sued the NEA. And that was, a big grant that she turned down, and she eventually won, but it was kind of the beginning of the end for her company. So she really stood by her convictions, but she was devoted to her art form. She was devoted to dance, and she's a West Coast person, a West Coast modern dancer. And people think it all came from the East Coast. They know nothing about the history of that form of dance, which is very different. And it's
I
interesting.
mean, it was beautiful. It was, the footage of her dancing is just stunning. Her work is stunning.
Yeah, and it's very, that technique came from Native American dance,
Oh, interesting.
which, people don't realize. That's very different from East Coast dance. She told me stories of having tribal people coming in and teaching them chants, teaching them dances. They would go to the celebrations because an Indian council was down the street from their studio, in the late 30s in LA. So, yeah.
Wow. So what are you all working on next? What's next? We're ready for new work from you all.
I'm taking a break.
That's well deserved after making a documentary. Usually we need a lot of downtime afterwards.
A little bit.
What about you, Faith?
I have a couple thoughts. I have a couple of just, it would be a bit of a break. So someone on our crew, I like how he says it, one of our editors, yeah, you need a palate cleanser. That's what it's always like, what we do, what's your little thing that you're going to do after? So I'm talking to someone that I think would be kind of cool to get, we're asking women, what do you miss? What's not in your, what's not around you that you miss consuming if you were going to go someplace, whether it's YouTube or whatever? Is there anything that you miss, and what kind of conversations can we have? What are we not, what have we left to the side, so we're exploring some of those thoughts, a little bit of coming together, and then we'll see what comes next. I do have another, the story will come, like this one came. If I'm meant to do another documentary, I believe wholeheartedly creator will, and the grandmother, I'll be nudged.
Bridget, you got anything brewing?
Yeah, I think it's going to be something completely different, a personal film about my
Nice.
family and being from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and not from the part of Cambridge that you usually hear about. So I think, but I just found out, if I can share, I just found out today that I'm going to the Flying Broom Festival in Turkey.
Oh, wow.
It's the Flying Broom Women's Festival in Ankara. So that's going to be June 1st through 3rd, and then June 13th, I'm having bilateral knee replacements.
Oh, geez.
Busy month you got there.
So you're saying that's how you get there? That's how you get there, a flying broom?
Oh, yeah.
Not a,
I don't know. In fact, I have to,
I was laughing.
I have a friend who lives there, and he's like, well, when are you coming? And I'm like, I don't know. They just told me. I have no idea. But yeah, no, it's going to be sort of a completely different project.
Cool. Well, all of you, your films are beautiful. They are amazing accomplishments, and they were a pleasure and a gift to watch. So I thank you all for your work. And once again, this year, we have all women documentarians on the panel, which I personally love in this industry. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the festival. I hope to see you all in person. Wait, we have one more question. Wait a minute. Don't go away. No, it's just somebody saying well done and thank you. So well done. Thank you.
Can I just say something?
Yes,
about your
please.
panel?
Yes.
I thought I did have a giggle when it was like, he had a faith and a space and hope and charity. Like, you know, yeah, I thought today that was pretty cute.
You're right. Have
Yeah.
it all. All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
filmmakers.
you.
I will see you at the festival.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You
You
too.
too.
Bye.